Welcome back to another riveting episode where we dissect the latest in global politics and power plays. We're talking about the growing coziness between Russia and North Korea. Yes, you heard that right, folks. These two nations are getting chummier by the day. Yeah, it's enough to make you wish for the halcyon days of the Cold War, back when things were simple and we only had one nuclear-armed dictator to worry about. Remember those days, when the world was on the brink of nuclear annihilation, but at least we knew who the players were? Now, you might be thinking, John, isn't Russia a bit busy trying to, not completely fail at conquering Ukraine? And you'd be right. The situation in Ukraine is a quagmire, a mess of epic proportions that has drawn international condemnation and sanctions. But even with Putin's attention span shorter than a hamster on a sugar rush, he's still finding time to buddy up with Kim Jong-un. It's like he's multitasking on a global scale, juggling crises like a circus performer. Why? Because misery loves company, especially when that company also has a stockpile of weapons that go boom. These two leaders are finding common ground in their shared disdain for the West and their mutual love for military might. This isn't just two authoritarian regimes awkwardly slow dancing at the global prom. No, this is a strategic alliance, a calculated move to consolidate power and influence. This is about challenging the West, sticking it to NATO, and maybe, just maybe, reshaping the world order in their own image is a bold move and one that has significant implications for global stability. Buckle up, folks, because things are about to get interesting. The geopolitical landscape is shifting and we're all along for the ride. We're talking about two countries with a long and storied history of human rights abuses, election rigging and repressing their own people. Their track records are abysmal and their partnership only amplifies the potential for further atrocities. And now they're teaming up. It's a nightmare scenario for anyone who values democracy and human rights. It's like watching a buddy comedy where both protagonists are actually supervillains. Imagine if the Joker and Lex Luthor decided to join forces. It's that kind of unsettling. The international community is watching closely, and sanctions are likely to follow. But will they be enough to deter this new axis of authoritarians? Only time will tell. In the meantime, the world holds its breath, hoping for a resolution that doesn't involve more conflict and suffering. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. So how do these two rogue states plan on taking on the West? It's a question that has puzzled many, but the answer lies in their strategic alliances and shared objectives. Well, for starters, they're not exactly limiting their social calendar to just each other. Their playbook involves a broader coalition of like-minded nations. Think of it like a really exclusive club, but instead of a velvet rope and a bouncer, it's a shared disdain for democracy and a penchant for human rights violations. This club is not about social status, but about mutual interests in opposing Western ideologies. We're talking about cozying up to countries like Belarus, Iran, and Syria. These nations have their own grievances against the West and find common ground with Russia and North Korea. Places where the words free press are met with the same enthusiasm as a vegan at a sausage fest. In these countries, dissent is not tolerated, and the state exerts tight control over information. These guys are all about building a network of nations that feel similarly burned by the West, or at least that's what their propaganda machines are telling everyone. The narrative they push is one of resistance and solidarity against Western oppression. It's a classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, even if that friend also happens to be a brutal dictator with a questionable haircut. This alliance is less about genuine friendship and more about strategic convenience. But hey, when you're trying to dismantle the global order, you can't be picky about who you break bread with. These alliances are forged out of necessity and a shared goal of undermining Western influence, or in this case, who you share a plate of borscht and kimchi with. These diplomatic dinners are more than just meals. They're opportunities to solidify alliances and discuss mutual strategies, and it's not just about empty gestures and photo ops. These nations are engaging in serious exchanges of intelligence and resources. These guys are signing treaties, sharing intelligence, and generally making it clear that they've got each other's backs, no matter how many international laws they have to break along the way. Their cooperation extends to military support, economic aid, and political backing, creating a formidable front against Western policies. Joint military exercises are a common sight, showcasing their readiness to support each other in times of conflict. These drills are not just for show, they are preparations for potential confrontations with Western forces. Economic ties are also being strengthened with trade agreements that bypass Western sanctions and create a self-sustaining network. These economic partnerships are crucial for their survival and resistance against Western economic pressure. Propaganda plays a significant role in maintaining these alliances. State-controlled media in these countries constantly highlight their unity and shared goals, reinforcing the narrative of a united front against Western aggression. Public support is manufactured through rallies and state-sponsored events where citizens are encouraged to show their loyalty to the regime and its allies. These displays of unity are meant to intimidate the West and reassure their own populations of their strength. Diplomatic visits are frequent, with envoys traveling between these nations to discuss strategies and reinforce their commitments. These visits are symbolic of their ongoing cooperation and shared objectives. In speeches, leaders from Russia and North Korea often emphasize their alliances, portraying them as essential for their survival and resistance against Western domination. These speeches are designed to rally their own people and send a message to the world that they are united and determined. From military cooperation to economic partnerships and propaganda efforts, the alliance between Russia, North Korea and their allies is multifaceted and robust. It's a complex web of relationships built on mutual interests and a shared desire to challenge the Western-dominated global order. As the world watches, these alliances continue to evolve, posing a significant challenge to the West. The question remains, how will the West respond to this growing network of nations that hate freedom? Let's talk military muscle, because that's where this bromance gets really scary. Russia, despite its, shall we say, challenges in Ukraine, still boasts a massive nuclear arsenal. And North Korea, well, they've got nukes too, along with a leader who seems to enjoy testing them as much as a toddler enjoys flinging spaghetti at a wall. But here's the thing, what if they started sharing their toys? What if Russia, facing sanctions and export controls, decided to lend a helping hand and some high-tech goodies to their pals in Pyongyang? We could be talking about North Korea getting its hands on more advanced missiles, better targeting systems, maybe even some shiny new submarines to go with their nuclear program. And let's not forget about cyber warfare. Both countries are experts at using the internet to spread misinformation, hack their enemies, and generally sow chaos. Now let's talk about something even scarier than a nuclear-armed North Korea propaganda. Because Russia and North Korea aren't just content with flexing their military muscles, they also want to control what you think. And they're getting pretty good at it. We're talking about a full-blown assault on truth, using social media, state-sponsored news outlets, and an army of online trolls to spin narratives that would make a used car salesman blush. They're pushing conspiracy theories, discrediting Western media, and generally trying to convince the world that up is down, black is white. And invading your neighbors is just a friendly game of geopolitical tag. And the worst part, it's working. People are eating this stuff up, especially in countries where trust in traditional media is already low. It's like a virus, slowly infecting the global information ecosystem and making it harder and harder to tell fact from fiction. Sanctions proofing, how to survive when the West is mad at you. So the West slaps sanctions on Russia and North Korea. Big whoop, right? They'll just shrug it off and go back to their regularly scheduled programming of oppression and warmongering. Well, not quite. See, sanctions do hurt, especially when you're trying to run a modern economy, but that's where this alliance gets really interesting. Russia and North Korea are actively working to become less reliant on the West. They're boosting trade with each other, signing currency swap agreements, and generally trying to build an economic fortress that can withstand the storm of sanctions. Think of it like this. The West is trying to play a game of economic whack-a-mole, but Russia and North Korea are busy building a mole-proof bunker. Now let's talk about the United Nations, that bastion of diplomacy and international cooperation. Just kidding. It's more like a dysfunctional family reunion where everyone's pretending to get along while secretly plotting to steal each other's inheritance. And guess who's figured out how to game the system? You guessed it. Russia and North Korea, they're using their veto power in the Security Council to block resolutions they don't like, shielding each other from criticism, and generally turning the UN into a platform for their own propaganda. It's enough to make you wonder if the U in UN stands for utterly useless. But hey, at least it provides some unintentional comedy, right? Russia and North Korea, two nations with a history of defiance against the West, have found common ground. Their alliance is built on mutual interests and a shared disdain for Western influence. But here's the million-dollar question. Can this unholy alliance actually succeed? Can they overcome the numerous challenges that lie ahead and emerge as a formidable force on the global stage? Can Russia and North Korea really challenge the West and reshape the global order in their image? Honestly, it's complicated. The geopolitical landscape is ever-changing, and alliances are as fragile as they are strategic. On the one hand, they've got a lot of obstacles to overcome. Their economies are shaky, plagued by sanctions and internal mismanagement. The economic instability makes it difficult for them to sustain long-term military and political campaigns. Their militaries, while formidable in certain aspects, have their limitations. They lack the technological advancements and logistical support that Western nations possess. Their propaganda, while effective in rallying domestic support, isn't exactly winning hearts and minds on the global stage. But on the other hand, they're both incredibly determined. They have a history of resilience and a willingness to play the long game. They're not afraid to get their hands dirty, employing unconventional tactics and strategies to achieve their goals. And in a world that's increasingly chaotic and unpredictable, that counts for something. The global order is in flux, and the unpredictability of international relations can sometimes work in favor of those willing to take risks. So, should we be worried? Probably. The potential for conflict and instability is high, and the actions of these nations could have far-reaching consequences. Should we panic? Not yet. While the situation is concerning, it's not yet at a point where panic is warranted. However, vigilance is crucial. But we should definitely be paying attention. The moves made by Russia and North Korea could reshape the geopolitical landscape in ways we can't yet fully predict, because the future of the world might just depend on it. The decisions made in the coming months and years will have a profound impact on global stability and security.